This is the tutorial for Chapter 4, Section 1, Graphing Linear Equations, Day 2. So yesterday we graphed these linear equations making a table. We're going to do the same thing, however, we're going to use a calculator to help us come up with that table. So we've got this y value. The y value can also be in a different form. It could be in this function notation. So the function of x can equal 3x. And so the values that x could be any number. So that represents our independent variable, where y, or this function of x, represents our dependent variable. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to pick some domain values, some x values, some inputs, and we're going to plug them into our rule and come up with our function. So we're going to start with -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 for this function here. And so we're going to go ahead and find out what ends up happening. And so we're going to use this calculator, and the way we're going to end up doing it is we're going to plug in some numbers. Or first of all, we've got to start with our function mode. So if I press mode on this Casio FX300ES, I press mode, and it gives me these three options. I'm going to end up pressing the number 3 for table, and it gives me that function notation. So I'm going to enter my equation, and it is 3x. So I enter 3, and then to write the x, I have to use this alpha function, which is up here. So I press alpha, and that puts a little a right at the top left-hand corner, and then it allows me to press these red buttons, and I'm going to press x. And so that's what our function is. So I've got it written in there. I'm going to press equals now, and it goes to another function. So I can enter another one if I want it to, but at this time I'm going to go ahead and leave that blank and press equals again, and it says start. The start value is where I want to start. I want to start at -2. So that's where I'm going to press or enter. So I press -2, and then I press equals, and then it asks for where I should end. Well, I don't want to end at 5. I want to end my x values at +2. So I'm going to press 2, and then equals, and then the step value. The step values are how many spaces in between the start and the stop there are. And in this case, we have step values of 1. So I'm going to just press equals, since it already says 1 right there. And I get a function, a table of values. And so you can see on the first one, it says -2 and then -6, and that's what I end up getting there. So let me go ahead and write in that number. So I got -6 when I plugged in -2, and then the next one was -1, -3. So -3, and the next one says 0, 0. And now I am out of points because my screen's too short, so I just need to press the replay button and scroll down. So I scroll down a few times, and I see that the next two values, 1 gives me 3, and then for an x value of 2, I get an f of x value of 6. So I end up putting a 3 here and a 6 here, and then I'll plot these points. So I'll go over 2 spaces to the left, and then down 6 spaces. So this graph doesn't hold that 6 space, but I know it's somewhere down in this range here. And then I have to go over 1 space and down 3 spaces, and then over 0 up 0, and over 1 up 3 spaces, and then over 2 up 6. And then I've got a bunch of points I can draw a nice line in between. And so from there we can go ahead and sketch our graph and draw some arrows at the end, signifying it goes on forever in both directions. The next one, we'll use the same sort of tool to help us graph this one. We've got our x values and our function. Now I'm going to be a little more careful with which x values, which inputs I use, because I've got a fraction. So I want values of x that make this a whole number. It'll make the problem go a little easier. So I'm going to try -4. I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to go by 2's. So -4, -2, 0, 2, 4. I picked those numbers because 2 goes into each of these. If I picked an odd number, I'd end up with a fraction. So let's check out our calculator, and this time we're going to go ahead and press the AC button. That'll clear everything, and I'm going to press it again just to clear that function off. So now I'm going to enter -1/2. So this calculator, I press the negative sign, and then it's got a fraction key. And so from there I can enter the 1, and then scroll down to the 2, and then scroll over, I press the replay button to the right, and it brings the cursor in line with that fraction bar. So now I have to press the alpha x, and then I press plus 2. And then I press equals. Now I have that other function capability again, but I'm not going to use that. And now I'm going to start. Now my start value this time, I'm starting at -4. So I'm going to enter -4, press equals, and I want to end at +4. So you can see it down over here. My start was -4, my end was +4. So I'll press 4, and then my step value is 2 this time. So then I press equals, and I got my values. So -4, I get a +4. So from -4 it's 4, -2 it's 3, 0 it's 2. That's what it says right in this region here. So it's going down by 1 each time. So 4, 3, 2. I bet you could guess what these two are. It's probably going to be 1 and 0. Let's check it out though. Let's go back to that calculator and let's press the scrolling down the replay button a few times, and that'll scroll it down to where we need it. And when I did that, I see that yes, that's correct. If you look at here, I've got, it goes 2, 1, 4, 0, and that's what we thought it would end up being. See, 2, 1, 4, 0. So now let's go ahead and plot these points. So we'll start with -4 and +4. Put that dot there, and then over 2 spaces up 3, over 0 up 2, and over 2 up 1, over 4 up 0. And then I'll draw the line between those points. So that's what it looks like. I'll just erase this little part. And let's take a look at the next one. So this next line ends up just saying x. There's no y. So basically what that means is it's 0y, and then I just have that positive x equals -4. So what that means is x always equals -4. So what that'll look like is 4 spaces over on the x-axis, it's going to be a vertical line. So whenever it's just x all by itself, that means it's going to end up being a vertical line. And this one has no slope. So there's no slope to this line. So it's just x equals -4. Whenever it's x by itself with no y, there's no slope to that line. Where this line here, this line has a slope of up 1, 2, 3 over 1. So you can see how this slope is 3 to 1, 3 spaces to 1. Just like here, we can do the same thing. Up 3 and then over 1. So you can make those slope triangles. So here we had a slope equal to 3 over 1, which is just 3. On this one, though, we end up having a negative slope, and you can see it when I go ahead and draw the line, because here I have to go down 1. So whenever I go down, that represents a negative value. So down 1 means -1, and then 2 to the right is a +2. So it's positive again because I went to the right, and the right is a positive direction. So you can see that's what I end up doing each time when I draw the slope triangles to come up with points on that line. So down 1 over 2. So from this point, I end up having to substitute 0 in for x, or 0 is the coefficient of x because there's no value that's being multiplied by x. There's no x there, so we see that 0 times x must be that number since we don't see an x. And then we have plus y equals -1.5. So I'm going down 1.5 spaces right there, and it's just going to be a horizontal line going right through y at -1.5. So when we have a horizontal line, when it's horizontal, that means we have 0 slope. 0 slope in this case. So if it's that vertical line, that's when we have no slope. Horizontal line, 0 slope. Taking a look at the next problem, here we have to solve for y, get y by itself. And so when I do that, I'm going to go ahead and move the 4x over to the other side. And I've got this now, -3y equals -4x plus 3. And then I multiply by the reciprocal to cancel out that fraction. Do the same thing on this other side, and then I've got y equals 12x minus 9. I get that by multiplying the negative 3 by each of these values. Now I can't fit this on my graph, so I'm going to end up having to change my scale. I'm going to change my scale so I'm going by 3s. And so the way I show that is I put a 6 here, because this would be 3, 6, and this would be 9, so this would be 12 over here. So down here I would have negative 6, negative 12, and so on. And I'll do the same thing for these. I'll go by 3s again, so this would be 6, and this would be 9, this would be negative 6, and negative 9, or negative 12. And so over here this should be 12 instead. So we'll change that real quick. So I have to go down 9 spaces. So there's negative 9, and then follow the slope. So up 12 over 1. So up 12 spaces, put me here 6, and here is 12 spaces, and then over 1 space would not put me all the way over here because that's 3. So I've got to do just a little space right about there. And then I could do that again. Up 12 over another 1 would put me about right there. Not quite all the way over yet. On this next one, though, it'll be all the way over. And so you can see how it's a very steep slope heading uphill from left to right. Looking at this other one, I have to move the x term over, so I subtract it, and I'm left with this 0.5y equals negative x plus 1.5. So I'm going to rewrite that as a fraction. I'm going to write that as, well, actually, I'll just show just the division here. Divide by 0.5. And so when I divide by 0.5, when I do that division of 0.5 into 1, 1 divided by 0.5 gives me 2. And so I'm left with y equals, and then I've got negative 2x, and then I have to do 1.5 divided by 0.5, and that gives me 3. And so I have a plus 3. So whenever you divide by a fraction, you got to move the decimal point over. Do the same thing with the dividend. So really you're moving that decimal point one space over, so that's how I got 10 here. Move it over one space, move it over one space, and that's how I'm getting 15. And so I graph that by just going up 3 spaces and then going down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1, and that gets me on that line using that slope in this case here. So using the slope for this line in this case. So the slope of that line was negative 2 over 1, and the y-intercept was 0, 3. And so I knew that I'd go up one space, and I used the slope, using those slope triangles to come up with those points. And let's take a look at the last type of problem we see. So it says you have $100 in your savings account. And then it says you plan to deposit $12.50 each month. So $100 is the initial amount. So we've got y is going to end up being our amount in the savings account. And then I'm going to end up saying maybe x equals the amount of months, number of months, and we're going to go ahead and try to write an equation to match this. So y equals, and then we're saving $12.50 per month, so times by the number of months, and then we're going to end up starting with our $100. So we have $100 to start with. So we have that $100, and we're saving $12.50 per month. So now we've written the equation, and so now we're going to graph that linear equation. So on the graph, I'm going to say amount dollars in savings account. So I'm labeling my y-axis, and then I'll label my x-axis months on my x-axis, and y-axis is right here. And when I look at this, I'm going to go up by, I think I'll call this 50 right here. Now let's see if that works, if I can put that number in there, 100. Yeah, I'll go by 25s. So I'll put 50 here, and so this would be 100, and then 125. Let's see here, actually it should be 150, so let's fix that real quick. So I've got 150, 125 is down below, 175, so this is 200. Alright, so, and then I guess I'll go ahead and write in 250. So it's nice to skip a line in between it. It makes the data look a little less cluttered as we go. And I'll go by ones here, so this is 2, 4, 6, 8. So there's one space is number 1 month, 2 spaces, 2 months. And so I started at $100. So my initial point is right there at $100, and then I'm going up $12.50 each month. So remember, this is 25 right here. Half of 25, if I divided 25 by 2, I get $12.50. So you can see I'm just going to go up a half a space up, and then 1 month over. Puts us right there. So you can see if I go up a whole space, that'd be 2 months. So every 2 months you're going up 1 space. And so I can continue that graph over until the end. And so I can draw the line between those points, and that would be my line. So the next part says, how many months will it take you to save enough money to buy the 10 acres on Mars? Well, here it is, 10 acres on Mars for $175. So 175, that's at this line right here, and I'm going to carry it over to the line, and I hit the point right there. And then I'll carry it down to find out how many months that is. And that looks like it's 6 months. So at 6 months, we'll have $175 is what that represents, what that ordered pair represents. The other way to do it is just take our equation, and in place of y, I'm going to end up putting that $175. And then I go ahead and solve by doing some opposite operations. And so I'll go ahead and subtract that 100 from all sides. And that leaves me with 75 equals 12.5. When I divide by 12.5, the decimal point moves over 1 space, add a 0, and that goes in 6 times. So 6 equals M. So 6 months was the answer in this case. So those are types of problems you're going to see on tonight's homework. Good luck.